It's chilling stories together. I still remember it clearly, as if everything happened yesterday. I was just a little girl, about 8 to 10 years old. I was shivering from the cold, but couldn't take my eyes off the night sky, trying to spot Santa Claus. My mother sat beside me, holding me close. We lived in a small town, with only 2 neighboring houses nearby. Only Cindy's family was home celebrating Christmas that night, while Megan's family had gone on vacation. The air was bitterly cold. I constantly bothered my mother with questions. Mom, do you think Santa will bring me the gift I wished for? My mother smiled gently, saying she wasn't sure how good I had been this year. I suddenly had a burst of inspiration. I jumped out of her embrace, ran towards the dim moonlight, and shouted, "Ho, ho, ho!" I tried to mimic Santa's deep, booming laugh and turned back to look at my mother. She looked at me, and we both burst out laughing. Just then, a slow, dry voice echoed between us. "Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas, little girl." I instantly spun around, feeling utterly ecstatic. There he was, Santa Claus. His red suit looked a bit old and dusty, and his hat was tilted to one side, but I didn't care. All I saw was Santa Claus landing in my small town. I ran to him and asked loudly, "Did you bring my presents, sir?" Santa stepped closer. In the freezing air, I smelled an indescribable stench, and a strong odor of alcohol wafted over. Santa replied in a raspy, terrifying voice, "I've got blood right here, kid." I froze at the peculiar answer. Suddenly, I felt a strong pull from my mother. She picked me up, backed away towards the porch, and shouted, "Get away from here now." My mother's voice was trembling, which scared me more than Santa's words, because her reaction was so strange. When he stepped close enough, under the dim yellow light on the porch, I could see clearly. There were dark red dried streaks on his torn red clothes. His beard was scraggly, matted, and some parts were also stained red. He sneered, speaking slowly in a deep voice. "I'm just here to bring joy," and let out a dry, hacking laugh. He was about 3 heads taller than my mother. His enormous, hulking figure was overwhelming. My mother started running while still carrying me in her arms. We only managed a few steps. My mother tripped and fell forward, but managed to turn so I wasn't crushed. Santa quickly grabbed her ankle. She shoved me toward the house door and desperately screamed, "Run, honey! Get inside and call 911 immediately! Hurry!" I was stunned, not immediately reacting to my mother's demand. Santa began wrestling with my mother, trying to hold her down. He punched my mother hard in the face twice, making blood stream from her nose and eyebrow. He stood over my mother, looked straight at me, and laughed a horrifying laugh that echoed in the dark night. I panicked and ran toward the house, but he was much faster than I was. He ran past me and blocked my way. He laughed, his terrifying face leaning close. "What are you going to do now, little girl?" I looked toward the only neighboring house with lights on, Cindy's house. I saw Cindy's husband, Stephen, running out. I screamed desperately, "He hurt Mom! Help!" As soon as I finished speaking, he knocked me down to the ground. Seeing this, Stephen rushed over and loudly demanded that Santa leave. Very quickly, a struggle ensued. Santa was horribly gaining the upper hand. My mother staggered up, ran over, and kicked him in the back. She tried to push, pull, and hit, using all her strength to help Stephen. I also ran over, my small fists barely penetrating his thick fur coat. But he didn't care at all. Stephen was already unconscious. He pulled something shiny from his pocket and stabbed Stephen's abdomen with vicious, heavy blows. Fresh blood flowed down, soaking into the white snow, spreading into a horrific dark red. My mother grabbed my hand tightly and dragged me away to run. I looked back, seeing him continue to stab Stephen many more times in a frenzy. My mother pulled me harder and covered my eyes. We got inside the house. My mother hurriedly locked all the doors, drew the curtains, and screamed for me to call 911 immediately. Meanwhile, she moved all the heaviest furniture like the bookshelf and even the refrigerator to barricade all the windows and the main door. I called 911. I tried to speak coherently, but a desperate, horrifying scream suddenly echoed from Cindy's house. My mother went to the only window not completely blocked, covered her mouth with her hand, then shouted into the phone, "He's killing them! Someone please come here. Please!" After that, the screaming outside stopped, leaving only an icy silence. My mother put the phone down and hugged me tightly. After he had dealt with Cindy's family, he came over and started kicking our door violently. He smashed the windows and tried to punch and push away the objects my mother had used to barricade them. He started throwing his massive body against the front door. My mother held me tight. She was crying and trembling uncontrollably. I stared intently at the front door. It shook violently with every shove from the giant man. I thought it was about to give way. A loud bang sounded, and the protective wall my mother tried to create was breached. The main door flew open, and furniture shattered. Fortunately, the police car lights flashed. They had arrived. But he still didn't stop. The lunatic Santa still charged into the house, even when they used a taser to try and restrain him. Finally, the maniac Santa was subdued by the police and taken away. But the memory of that horrifying Christmas night became a deep scar, haunting me for the rest of my life. The man who attacked us was Joe Sticker. He wasn't a planned killer, but a man kicked out of his home on Christmas night by his wife because of his addiction. In his despair and madness, Joe got drunk and used some extremely powerful hallucinogenic drugs. He wore the old Santa Claus costume, and in his mentally unstable state, he turned into a brutal murderer. He killed 3 people that night: Cindy, her husband Stephen, and their son. The incident destroyed everything. To this day, my mother still avoids mentioning the events of that night. She never decorates the house or the Christmas tree anymore. As for me, every year when the holidays come around, I avoid crowded places. Seeing someone dressed up as Santa Claus, even in an advertisement, will send me into a state of severe panic. I barely dare to step outside in the cold anymore, and eventually, I had to leave my country. I moved to a place with no snow and where people don't celebrate Christmas. That nightmare forced me to go far away, trying to find a peace that I know will never truly be complete again. I have to admit, being an addict during the holidays is a strange experience. Unlike any other time of year, heroin gradually took everything: my hobbies, my job, and then my family. A bad breakup with my longtime girlfriend pushed me over the edge. A few months turned into 6 years of addiction and loneliness. I moved to Portland, and the only thought in my head was how to get the next fix. As Christmas approached that year, a peculiar phenomenon often occurred. Most dealers and even other users would disappear. They went home to their families. For me, that wasn't just confusing. It was terrifying, as it put an addict at risk of the most intense withdrawal sickness of the year. On December 23rd, the girl I was living with and I managed to accumulate 15 grams of opium. It was enough for us to survive the holidays. After returning from my night shift, I looked for the small wooden box we used to store the drugs, but it was empty. Initially, I thought she had hidden it elsewhere, fearing I would use it all. But after a few minutes of frantic searching, I realized the truth. She had left. She had not only taken all the drugs, but also swiped all my other valuables. A wave of despair and betrayal hit me, but the instinct of an addict didn't allow me time for grief. I immediately pushed the emotions aside. The only thing I needed to do was find a way to replace the lost drugs before withdrawal set in. Throughout the night of the 23rd and all day on the 24th, I walked for miles on the cold streets of Portland. Snow was lightly falling. Warm Christmas lights hung everywhere. But for me, it was just a race against time. I called every lead. All my usual contacts were missing due to Christmas. I called the worst of the worst, Sketchy Kevin, Pissy Pete, but even these guys weren't answering. By December 24th, I only managed to scrape together enough drugs to stabilize for the night, less than half a gram, just enough to postpone the pain, not to satisfy the craving. On the morning of December 25th, the withdrawal started violently. My whole body ached, my muscles shook uncontrollably, and continuous nausea tormented me. I called again. Finally, Rat, a skinny dealer with a bizarre name, called me back. He said a guy named George would spot me a few grams if I met him. I immediately asked for the address before Rat could finish his sentence. I had no choice but to trust a sketchy deal on Christmas Day. When I arrived, I was completely surprised. George lived in a beautiful, luxurious 3-story house, tucked away on the edge of the suburbs, far from the slums I was used to. The house had a neatly trimmed garden and warm Christmas lights. George looked like a successful, financially stable man, unlike any addict or drug dealer I had ever met. He politely invited me in, his voice soft and elegant. The warmth from the fireplace and the smell of Christmas pine almost made me forget what I was doing there. George even showed me the heroin he had prepared and allowed me to use a little right there to stabilize my body. I rushed to it immediately. The familiar, warm, comfortable feeling quickly spread, blurring my mind and momentarily erasing all despair. After I took the drug and the physical craving subsided, George sat down next to me, gently placing his hand on my knee. "There's something I want you to help me with. Finish it, and the grams are yours," he said, his voice deep and calm. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, trying to guess what the favor was. George was silent for a few seconds, then smiled, stood up, and signaled for me to follow. We went upstairs. The long hallway was carpeted in red, lined with neatly framed family photos. George stopped at a door at the end of the hall and opened it. The room inside was meticulously decorated, but amidst the soft fragrance of perfume, I smelled the familiar pungent odor of heroin and another smell. It was foul, faint, but distinct, like decaying flesh. I was still looking around confusedly when George suddenly ripped off his coat and lunged, wearing only his underwear. His expression changed drastically. It was no longer polite, but craving, sick. "I've prepared everything for this Christmas night," George said, his voice husky, uttering bizarre compliments about my body. "Satisfy me, and the drugs are yours." Disgust hit me, stronger than the withdrawal sickness. I froze, then a shudder ran through my body. "I have to go," I stammered. George stepped forward, blocking the door. "Not that easy," he said, his voice low and firm. I tried to push past him, but he lunged, trying to drag me down onto the bed. We wrestled. I was naturally taller, but years of addiction had drained my strength. As I struggled to push him onto the floor, I suddenly noticed a foot sticking out from under the bed. I bent down and went into a state of extreme shock. A young man lay motionless beneath it, his face pale, eyes rolled back, and lips blue. The pungent smell of his corpse made me gag. Without thinking twice, I used all my remaining strength, punching George, who was scrambling to get up, sending him tumbling. I bolted out of the room, down the stairs, and ran out of that warm but death-filled house without daring to look back. Back at my miserable apartment, my hands still shaking, I picked up the phone and called the police. I concealed my identity, only leaving George's address, saying there might have been a murder. Ending the call, I sank to the floor, unable to breathe. I was disgusted, not just with George, but with myself. I was so desperate, I almost sold myself to a monster. The next day, the news reported that police had arrested a man named George Scott in connection with the death of an 18-year-old, suspected of a drug overdose. At the scene, they found a large amount of heroin, sex toys, and evidence suggesting multiple victims had frequented the house. George was sentenced to prison for multiple charges: the dignified appearance, the beautiful house, the Christmas lights were just a facade for a monster who preyed on the weakest. Addicts. I followed everything from afar. I didn't tell anyone I had been there, but I never forgot those horrifying moments. That Christmas night woke me up from my stupor. The death of the young man under the bed was a rock bottom I would never forget. I was more afraid of death and loss of dignity than of withdrawal. I began the difficult, painful, and prolonged journey of recovery. Now, I have been clean for almost 3 years. Every Christmas, I still recall the blank eyes of the young man under the bed and George's craving. I remember the desperation that almost made me sell myself for a single dose. I'm telling this story not to ask for pity, but to send a message to anyone who is thinking of just trying once. Heroin is never just once. It will take everything and never give anything back. I still can't forget the way that man looked at me when his coworker was lying unconscious below the cliff. It wasn't the look of a grieving friend. It was the look of someone trying to hide something. Today, when the police called to say that the man below the cliff had finally woken up after 6 months in a coma, I knew the truth would be revealed. It all happened 5 years ago. It started on a September morning in Groveland, California. My name is Anna. At the time, I was a trail guide. That day, I was guiding a team-building trip for a company from San Francisco. There were 4 men and 3 women. The trip lasted for 2 days and 1 night. The group of visitors started the first day in a very excited mood. They brought expensive cameras with them. The morning went normally. We walked through the trails. I talked about the area's terrain and history. The group was quite friendly. The only thing I noticed was that 2 men, Brad and Mike, seemed to have some tension between them. Brad was tall, about 6'2", with short brown hair and cold blue eyes. Mike was smaller. He had black hair. He had a friendly personality. That night, when everyone had gone to their tents to rest, I was still up. I was looking over the next day's schedule and checking the equipment. That's when I heard an argument from Brad and Mike's tent. The voices sounded pretty intense, but I couldn't hear the content clearly. I only caught Mike's last sentence. "Oh, that's all? You want me to get out of your way?" His voice sounded sarcastic and angry. Then everything went silent. I thought they had resolved everything, so I didn't pay any attention to it. The next morning, they were both acting normally. At noon, we stopped to rest on a small clearing near a cliff. I was checking the map when Brad and Mike said they wanted to go take some pictures near the edge of the cliff. I reminded them to be careful. They nodded and took their cameras with them. I continued to chat with the rest of the group. I explained the area's geology. A few minutes later, a scream came from the direction of the cliff. I turned my head. Brad was running toward us. His face was pale. He was breathing heavily. He pointed toward the cliff and said Mike had fallen down. I immediately ran after Brad to the edge of the cliff and looked down. Mike was lying motionless on an inclined slope about 80 feet below us. It wasn't a vertical cliff, but the height and slope were enough to cause serious injury. Brad said he couldn't stop it. Mike just wanted to take pictures closer to the edge. Then, Mike slipped and fell. I told the rest of the group to stay in a safe place. Then, I ran along the edge of the cliff to find an easier way down. Brad insisted on coming with me to help. We found a steep trail that we could use to get down. We started to climb down carefully. On the way down, Brad kept asking if Mike was dead. When we got close to Mike, I saw that he was still breathing. Blood was flowing from his head. His leg was broken at a terrible angle. Brad knelt down next to Mike. He tried to call his name. Then, he started to mumble that Mike just slipped. He couldn't do anything, and it wasn't his fault. These words didn't sound like he was comforting an injured friend. They sounded like he was defending himself. I only later understood why he said those things. I grabbed my radio and contacted headquarters to request an emergency medical rescue. While waiting, I tried to give first aid to Mike. Brad sat next to me. He continued to repeat that he had tried to pull Mike back, but it was too late. This made me wonder. Before, he said Mike slipped on his own. Now he was saying he tried to pull him back. The rescue team arrived pretty quickly. The park rangers handled Mike's injuries professionally. They put him on a stretcher and took him up to the helicopter. Back at the camp, I paid more attention to Brad. While everyone else was shocked and worried about Mike, he was unusually calm. What was remarkable was that Brad didn't show any signs of grief or shock like the others. I started to have doubts about what really happened on that cliff. That night, I thought a lot about Brad's attitude, and especially about the argument he had with Mike the night before. I started to suspect that Mike didn't slip on his own. A few days later, the police contacted me. They wanted to interview me about the accident. He said Mike was still in a coma, and they needed to learn more about the circumstances of the incident. I told them everything in detail. The detective took careful notes. He asked if I had any suspicions about Brad. I hesitated for a moment. Then I said frankly that I didn't think Mike slipped on his own, and that Brad knew that. The detective nodded. He said they were investigating because there were some inconsistencies in Brad's testimony. A miracle finally happened. After 6 months, Mike woke up. Mike's mind was completely clear. When he was able to talk, Mike said that he didn't slip. Brad pushed him down after an argument. The police compared his testimony with the evidence and the inconsistencies in Brad's story. Immediately, Brad was arrested. The truth was also revealed. My suspicion for the past 6 months was not wrong. I'm Jake, a 26-year-old born and raised in Montana. From a young age, I've been fascinated with exploring the wilderness. Alaska was always a dream of mine, the last great frontier. Last October, I decided to take my dream trip to the Brooks Range near the town of Coldfoot, Alaska. That morning, I carefully drove my adventure bike on the slippery road. My breath formed white clouds in the cold air. I had checked the weather forecast. The snow was supposed to stop in the afternoon. Everything was going smoothly. I felt pretty confident in my skills. Around 10 a.m., I was driving at 30 miles an hour around a gentle curve on the side of a mountain. The snow was still falling steadily. Snowflakes stuck to my helmet visor. I was just thinking about stopping for a break when I suddenly saw something move. A huge black mass slowly came out of the bushes on the left side of the road. At first, I thought it was just a large log rolling down, but then I realized it was moving at a steady pace. It was a huge brown bear. The bear continued to walk into the middle of the road. I reacted immediately. I slammed on the brakes. The motorcycle started to slide uncontrollably on the ice. I completely lost control of the bike. I just closed my eyes and braced for impact. There was a loud crash. I felt myself fly off the seat. My head hit something very hard. Everything quickly went dark. I don't know how long I was out. Pain. That was the first feeling when I opened my eyes. I was lying face down. I tasted the salty, metallic flavor of blood on my lips. I couldn't move my left arm. My right leg hurt. I guessed it was broken. I looked around. I saw my bike lying on its side a few yards away. Then I heard breathing. It was heavy and raspy. I turned my head to the right. My heart stopped. The giant brown bear was lying pretty close to me next to my bike. Its hip was bleeding. It lifted its head and looked at me. Its dark brown eyes were full of annoyance. The bear's growl woke me up. I had to figure out what to do. Okay, Jake, here's the situation. I'm hurt, the bear is hurt, and we're both grumpy. Don't move quickly. Absolutely not. I had read somewhere that bears can run faster than a horse, even though this one didn't look like it could run right now. Slowly, very slowly, I tried to crawl backward toward a rock a few feet away. Every time I moved, the bear looked at me with a watchful eye. And then, I realized the bear was crawling after me. It tilted its head. It occasionally panted. My leg hurt. Its hip hurt. We were both crawling and staggering. Cold sweat started to pour down my face. Every time the bear growled, I stopped and imagined it getting up and pouncing on me. I thought, is this where I die? My family will probably write on my tombstone, Jake died from not paying attention while driving. Just as I reached the rock, a car horn sounded in the distance. Both the bear and I turned our heads. A pickup truck stopped. A big man jumped out and yelled, asking if I was okay. I tried to talk about the bear. My voice was hoarse. He helped me get into his truck and drove me to the nearest hospital. Once I was safe in the truck, I looked back and saw that the bear was no longer moving. I figured it must have broken its ribs. On the way to the hospital, I contacted the rescue service. I borrowed the owner's phone and called the local emergency number to report the location of my adventure bike. I also reported the injured brown bear so they could contact the wildlife agency. The doctor diagnosed me with a broken leg, a mild concussion, and a torn muscle in my right thigh. Luckily, there were no serious internal injuries. The next day, the rescue team called me to say they had retrieved my bike and gear, but there was no trace of the brown bear. I couldn't help but worry about the fate of the brown bear. After all, it was my fault.
Nathan's Diary, April 27th, 2023. I've just returned home after nearly a month of treatment at the hospital. On this exact day a month ago, a terrifying event occurred at school. To this day, I still feel pain, and my ears ring from the terrifying gunshots that day. It was an ordinary day, and I arrived at school feeling quite anxious because I was about to receive my math test results. I couldn't do the test. I didn't understand anything when I read those dreadful equations. I wish today wouldn't come, Rachel. I'll definitely get my allowance for the whole week cut by my mom, I complained to my best friend sitting next to me. In contrast to me, Rachel was an outstanding student, especially in mathematics. Our houses are on the same street, so we usually go to school together. It might be a bit rushed, considering we're both only 9 years old, but I really like Rachel. As expected, I got an F on my test, while Rachel scored an A+. I tugged at my hair forcefully. I'm definitely doomed. Rachel turned to look at me and smiled helplessly. I'm actually really happy. The homeroom teacher asked those who received low scores to get their parents' signatures on the test and submit it back by tomorrow morning. Is there anything worse than this for a 9-year-old student? I muttered. Rachel, can we not go home today? Or can I sleep over at your place? Stop talking nonsense, Nathan, Rachel said, slightly annoyed. Suddenly, we all startled and looked at each other because the noise was so loud. A few students approached the window to look down with curiosity and excitement, while others wanted to run out of the classroom to see where the noise was coming from. Everyone return to your seats immediately, our homeroom teacher ordered us. I looked at Rachel, who seemed very tense. What's wrong? I asked her. Nathan, I'm sure that was the sound of gunshots. Gunshots! Chris, the chubby guy sitting behind us, exclaimed loudly after overhearing the conversation. The whole class was in an uproar, while our homeroom teacher kept urging us to stay quiet. She made a few phone calls, then broke down in tears and rushed to lock the classroom door. We all fell into confusion, silently turning our gazes toward her. After a few minutes, our homeroom teacher looked at us with red eyes, took a deep breath and announced, "Dear students, we have a small incident, nothing major, so I need your cooperation. First, absolute silence. Then, very quietly, take cover under your desks at each of your seats until further instructions. We can all do this, right?" Our homeroom teacher raised her hand to her mouth to signal for silence. We nodded in understanding and then began following her instructions. None of us were given exact details about the situation, but we all knew that the fact the homeroom teacher had instructed the entire class to stay in their seats and remain silent was a very serious matter. Rachel couldn't stop crying, and her distress made those around her even more frightened. I held Rachel's hand tightly, but it didn't seem to help. "Rachel, can you come up here with me?" Her voice was gentle. As soon as Rachel stood up, a series of loud explosions rang out. The lock and window of the door shattered, and a powerful force pushed the door open. Chaos quickly ensued, with screams, cries, and the deafening sound of gunfire shaking the room. The homeroom teacher rushed over and hugged Rachel tightly. In the blink of an eye, both of them were covered in numerous holes from the gunfire. The homeroom teacher and Rachel fell right in front of me. My entire body froze. That image, their faces, I will never be able to forget. The gunshots stopped, leaving only the cries and moans of the other students. As for me, I sat there, staring at the homeroom teacher and Rachel with wide, empty eyes, my mouth agape. A little while later, 2 police officers arrived. We were asked to hold hands and walk out of the classroom in a single file, maintaining complete silence. I didn't follow the instructions. I couldn't control my body at that moment. One of the police officers came over and carried me away. I was hospitalized right after that, and it took about a week before I was able to communicate again. "Mom, are Rachel and the teacher okay?" That was the question I asked every day for a month in the hospital, but my mom never answered. After being discharged from the hospital, I told my parents I wanted to go to Rachel's house, but they took me to the local cemetery instead. Here, there was Rachel, my homeroom teacher, the chubby guy Chris, the class president Charity, Miss Dana, and even the principal. The story above is based on a true event that occurred on the morning of March 27th, 2023. A shooting occurred at Covenant School, a private elementary school in Nashville, Tennessee. At least 6 people were killed in the incident, including 3 9-year-old students, 2 teachers, and even the school principal. The suspect was a 28-year-old individual who identified as male but was biologically female, Aiden Hale, an ex-student of the school. He was neutralized by the police at the scene. The perpetrator used 2 semi-automatic rifles and a handgun to carry out the attack, following a meticulously planned strategy. The police reported that the perpetrator had no prior criminal record, and the 2 rifles he used were legally obtained. Additionally, he was undergoing mental health treatment at the time of the incident. Outrage and deep sorrow were left within the community, especially in the U.S., where school shootings occur relatively frequently. I messed up big time. I'm Raymond, 26, and I just moved from Tennessee to Texas for work. I've been dealing with depression and have been getting treatment at the hospital in my hometown for the past 2 years. The illness has made me miss out on a lot of opportunities and beautiful things in life. I moved to a completely new place with the hope of starting over. I started working at a securities company and rented a small house on the outskirts of the city. But the pressure from work and finances made me start regretting my decision. Every problem feels like a tighter knot in a rubber band, making me feel incredibly suffocated. There were many times I thought about going back home, but I kept pushing myself a little harder. One morning, as I was getting ready for work, I found a note on the refrigerator that said, "Remember to bring lunch." I just stared at the handwriting on the note, feeling blank. Since I was running late for work, I didn't think much of it. I just opened the cupboard and grabbed the burrito I made the night before. The next day at work, I found another note on my kitchen table, written in the same handwriting. "Remember to bring an umbrella, it's going to rain today." Since I live alone, I wondered who could have written these notes. Anyway, it wasn't too serious, so I decided to follow the note's advice once more. That day, the unexpected cloudy rain was really annoying and caught everyone off guard. As for me, I was pretty relaxed with the umbrella I brought. In the following days, the notes started appearing regularly around the house. I once decided not to follow the note's advice, and that day turned out to be really terrible. Catch up with Lucy today. Present your presentation with confidence and remember to back up your point of view. I just got used to the notes showing up around the house without thinking much about it. It felt like it was predicting the future and reminding me of everything I needed to do. I felt like I was back to my true self, no longer self-conscious or afraid. I even had a girlfriend named Janet. It might sound a bit silly, but it was the notes that helped me win her over. It showed me how to make a good impression and how to confess my feelings. She was very beautiful, with long brown hair that always smelled like fresh roses. She was gentle and thoughtful. My life was incredibly happy during that time. The notes became indispensable to me, like how you need to eat every day to stay alive. That night was the first time she invited me to her place after 3 months of dating. 6:30, I'm making a super special creamy pasta for you. Needless to say, I was thrilled. I went home right after work, took a shower, and put on a really nice outfit. I didn't forget to pick up a bottle of wine and a bouquet of roses, her favorite flowers. At 6 p.m., just as I was about to leave the house, a note suddenly appeared on the door. "Finish, Janet." I was startled when I read that strange message. After thinking about it for a while, I guessed that finish might mean ending the relationship with Janet. But we were really happy together. Why would we end it? I decided to ignore the note and quickly headed to her place to make sure I arrived on time. But before I could even get in the car, another note appeared on the car door. "Kill Janet or don't go to her house." "What the heck?" I said, feeling a bit annoyed. I tore up the note, crumpled it, and tossed it in the trash. I got into the car planning to place the bottle of wine and the bouquet of flowers on the passenger seat. Another note appeared. "You have to kill Janet." I fell into deep thought, pondering everything. Up until now, the notes had always guided me accurately. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a message. "Honey, everything's ready. Are you on your way?" I texted Janet back and quickly drove off. I pulled up in front of her house right at 6:30 p.m., but I didn't go in right away. I just sat in the car, my mind racing with chaotic thoughts. Holding the bouquet of flowers and the bottle of wine, I decided to trust in love this time. She greeted me with a bright smile, which instantly made me feel more at ease. She was busy in the kitchen, preparing the food, while I opened the bottle of wine at the dining table. Feeling a little bulge in my pocket, I reached in and pulled out another note. "End it all now. Whatever you do, don't eat the pasta." I was sweating from the awkward situation. She brought 2 beautifully decorated plates of noodles to the table and set them down. "What's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" Janet asked, making me feel startled and embarrassed. "What's with the note?" she asked, continuing her curiosity. "No, just some notes from work," I replied. I quickly crumpled the paper and shoved it into my pocket. Sitting at the dining table, she rested her chin on her hand and looked at me expectantly, eager for me to try the noodles. I was sweating heavily under my shirt, and my throat felt so tight I couldn't swallow anything. I took a sip of wine and made an excuse to use the bathroom. My head felt like it was about to explode, so I splashed cold water on my face to try to wake myself up. It seemed like there was another note in my shirt pocket. "She will hurt you with a small knife." I felt weak and unsure of what to do. I loved Janet a lot, but I couldn't ignore these messages. Noticing I'd been gone for a while, Janet called out for me. I quickly walked out, startled to see her holding a small knife with a bright smile, while her other hand held a half-peeled apple. My mind was racing. I rushed to grab the knife from Janet's hand, and her panicked screams were loud, and the creamy pasta was covered in a layer of dark red and fishy liquid. Janet screamed and ran out of the house, while I sat on the floor in a daze, with my hands covered in red. A moment later, the police arrived and restrained me, despite my numerous explanations. I pulled out countless notes from my shirt and pants pockets, but they were completely blank. She was rushed to the emergency room and fortunately survived. The police took me back to Tennessee, and I ended up getting treated in a mental hospital. There were no notes predicting the future. I'd been living in a hallucination caused by my depression the whole time.
My girlfriend has passed away, but she still frequently messages me. Colleen, my girlfriend, had an accident when her car collided with 2 other vehicles and passed away just minutes later. We've been together for 5 years. I had plans to propose to her just 3 months into our relationship. Colleen, on the other hand, did not have a relaxed view on the topic of marriage. I loved her more than anything, so I went along with Colleen's decision. But I still held on to the hope of changing her mind. Now that's no longer possible. The day I received the tragic news, I felt as if a part of my soul had left with Colleen. I cried, feeling overwhelmed and devastated, constantly missing her. Every day without fail, I would send a good morning message to the one I loved. "Good morning, my love. Wishing you a wonderful day. Have a cheerful morning. I love you." No matter what happened, I would always text Colleen first to share it. "The project I told you about has succeeded beyond my expectations. I wish you could witness it, Colleen." I have Colleen's personal account password and frequently access it. It gives me the feeling that she's still there, that she can read everything I send. It's just that Colleen doesn't reply to me anymore. I also shared Colleen's social media account with her mother, Aunt Emma. I understand the pain Aunt Emma feels when her only child is taken away so suddenly. 13 months after Colleen left, she sent me her first message. "Hello." I felt shocked when I read that message, but a few seconds later, a sense of joy and hope washed over me. It was ridiculous, but I briefly thought that Colleen might still be alive. But then I convinced myself it was Aunt Emma. That was the only logical explanation, or so I thought. A few days later, Aunt Emma confirmed that she was not the one who had messaged me from Colleen's account. What if it was one of her friends? I suggested, another theory, which also seemed quite convincing. Colleen knew a lot of people, and it could have been a prank from one of her tech-savvy friends. "Hello? Hello?" That was the phrase Colleen used to text me the most, until I finally ran out of patience and replied, This is really crazy. How can you enjoy it? Not only that, Colleen's account started tagging me in posts. This was really exhausting for me. It was both Colleen and not her at the same time. I witnessed my girlfriend's body being brought home from the accident, endured the days of mourning, and my heart shattered as her coffin was lowered. But now, she's messaging me. There were times when I was truly convinced it was Colleen, because the words she used matched exactly what we had planned together. And the most horrifying, insane thing happened. I received a photo of myself taken from the window while I was sitting at my computer desk. It was sent from Colleen. I felt a wave of nausea and struggled to breathe. What the hell is happening? I shared this story on Reddit, hoping to find some connection or support because I felt so lost. The story above is based on a true event. A user named Nathan, with the Reddit handle NateSW, shared the story of his girlfriend of 5 years. Nathan's story garnered significant attention, and many people offered various theories to explain the strange events he described. One theory suggested that it might be the girlfriend's mother, who, out of grief and longing for her daughter, sent those messages to Nathan in an attempt to comfort him. Others speculated that Nathan might have been sending the messages to himself, either consciously or unconsciously, as a way to cope with his loss. It's possible that he was so consumed by grief and loss that his actions sometimes lacked clarity. Absolutely, regardless of the theories, it's the ones left behind who bear the deepest pain and longing. Their grief is a heavy burden that doesn't easily fade. Indeed, memories can bring joy, but also evoke difficult-to-forget pain. They are like a part of life, both beautiful and full of challenges. Beautiful memories can kill the soul if we don't find a way to break free and seek out new, joyful experiences. My name's Alex. Josh and Tyler, they've been best buds since college. The three of us are pretty outdoorsy. We love getting out in nature. Every now and then, we ditch the city for quick 2-day camping trips out in the woods. Last time, we headed out on a Saturday morning in July, each with a backpack loaded with gear. The plan? Hit 2 different campsites, one night at each. The first spot was about 2 miles off the main trail, tucked near a little stream. We made it there around 3 p.m. I dropped my pack and took a look around. Josh was already pulling his tent out, and Tyler was off gathering dry wood for the fire. "This place is perfect," Josh said while setting up. I nodded and started unpacking my stuff. The sun was already dipping low, and Tyler was stacking up kindling for a small fire. We kicked back, grilled some sausages, cracked open a few beers, and just let the stress from the week fade away. Then, around 8, something rustled in the bushes behind us. We all turned. Some guy stepped out. Gray, messy hair, unshaven beard. Looked like he hadn't seen a shower in a while. "Hey guys," he said. "Saw your fire and thought I'd come over." Josh glanced at me, then at Tyler. None of us said anything, but yeah. The vibe got weird fast. I asked, "Hey, you camping out here too?" The guy gave us this weird little smile. "You could say that. I've been out here a long time." He just stood there, eyes locked on the fire. That's when I noticed. His hands were shaking. "You okay?" "You look cold," Tyler asked. "Cold? Nah, I'm not cold anymore." That sent a chill down my spine. Josh got up real casual-like, said he was going to grab more firewood. "Mind if I stay here with you?" We all froze. No one said a word. A few seconds passed, but it felt way longer. And then he started humming. Some weird, wordless tune made my skin crawl. It wasn't like a song, more like a low moan, like someone hurting but trying to hold it in. Josh tried to play it cool. Yeah, well, we were just about to hit the sack. Gotta be up early tomorrow." The guy stopped humming, slowly turned his head toward Josh. "I'm always here, even when you think I'm not." Then, he just turned around and walked straight into the dark. gone. We sat there for a few minutes, dead quiet. "What the hell was that?" Tyler whispered. "Maybe he's just lost," Josh muttered, but even he didn't sound convinced. We put the fire out and got in the tent way earlier than planned. I was lying in my sleeping bag, wide awake, listening to every damn sound outside. Eventually, I must have passed out. Next morning, we packed up and made our way to the second campsite. On the way, we swung by the ranger station to grab some water and snacks. While Josh and Tyler were inside picking out food, I stepped out for a smoke. A big old bulletin board covered in missing person flyers. Most of them were sun-bleached and curling at the corners, but one stood out. The face on it made my stomach drop. Thomas Gray, 58, missing since last September. May have mental health issues, last seen in this area. It was him, the guy from last night, no doubt in my mind. I called Josh and Tyler out. As soon as they saw the flyer, the color drained from their faces. We called the number on the flyer. Cops said they'd send someone out to check the area. Thanked us for the heads up. They told us to be careful, report back if we saw him again. Josh looked at me. "Should we just head home?" I shook my head. "I mean, yeah, he's got issues, but he didn't seem dangerous." So we kept going. The second campsite was a good 5 miles out, way more remote, pretty much off the grid. We pitched our tent by this small lake. The afternoon went by like any other. We fished a bit, cooked some dinner, played cards, just hanging out. But once the sun went down, the vibe shifted. Around midnight, I jolted awake. That humming sound was back. Same weird tune from the night before, except this time, it was clearer, closer. It echoed all around our tent, like it was circling us. Josh sat up and grabbed my arm. "Did you hear that?" Tyler was awake too. We just laid there listening. The humming would stop, then start up again. "It's him," I whispered. "How the hell does he know where we are?" "Beats me!" I reached for my phone to call the cops. No signal. That creepy hum kept going all night. None of us slept a wink. By morning, we were done. No way we were staying another minute. As we packed up, I noticed something. Footprints, all around our tent. We didn't waste any more time, just grabbed our stuff and hit the trail back to the car. We were about a mile out when we heard it, a loud shout from behind us. "Alex, Josh, Tyler!" It was his voice, clear as day, calling each of us by name. We stopped dead in our tracks, turned around, and there he was. He was waving at us like we were old friends. Huge grin on his face, like he was thrilled to see us. We ran, full sprint, no looking back, until we spotted the car, dove in, and fired up the engine. Josh gunned it down the mountain like a bat out of hell. How the hell did he know our names?" Tyler asked, still catching his breath. No one answered. When we got home, we called the cops again and told them everything. About a week later, they found Thomas, but not alive. They found pieces of him in a deep cave. The medical examiner said he'd been dead for several days. Could have been the weather, could have been animals, or maybe something got to him before all that. We never went camping again after that. Sometimes Josh brings it up, says maybe we were just freaked out, tired, paranoid. Maybe we imagined stuff. But me? That one question still keeps me up at night. How the hell did he know our names? I didn't like silence and loneliness. That's why I went to the Sunnyvale Animal Rescue Center. Initially, I intended to adopt a dog, but as I walked down the hallway, my eyes met a pair of intelligent black eyes behind the bars. An African gray parrot with ash gray feathers and a bright red tail. The small sign read, "Jack, 8 years old, needs a quiet home." The rescue worker smiled sadly. "He's been here for almost a year. Hasn't said a word since he arrived." I pressed my hand against the cold metal bars. and Jack tilted his head, looking at me. There was something in those intelligent eyes, a deep sadness that I recognized immediately. "I'll take him," I said, my voice firm. On the way home, Jack sat silently in his cage. Occasionally he flinched whenever I accelerated or when a car horn blared. His toes gripped the perch tightly, his eyes constantly watching through the car window. Arriving home, I placed Jack's cage in the living room next to the large window. I didn't force him out of the cage, just opened the door and waited. For the first week, Jack barely touched his food when I was watching. He only ate when I left the room or late at night. Sometimes, I woke up to a soft rustling sound and saw his silhouette moving in the darkness. On the 10th day, Jack finally tentatively stepped out of his cage. I remained still, trying not to look directly at him to avoid scaring him. He slowly climbed onto the armrest of the chair, stood there, about a hand's breadth away from me. A month passed, and I had grown accustomed to Jack's silence. I talked to him like a friend. He always listened attentively, sometimes tilting his head or blinking as if processing information. Then one night, as I lay in bed, a voice echoed from the darkness.
"I see you."
I sat bolt upright, my heart pounding. The voice was deep and hoarse, not quite human. Looking across the dark room, I saw Jack standing on the dresser, his eyes reflecting the faint light from the window. "Jack?" I whispered, but he just silently watched me, as still as a statue. 2 days later, as I was washing dishes, that voice came again.
"I smell you."
I spun around. Jack perched on the back of a chair, his head tilted to one side, his eyes unblinking. "You can talk, Jack?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't respond, just hopped off the chair and flew towards his cage, as if regretting revealing his secret. That night, a scream tore through the silent air, jolting me awake. It was a woman's scream, desperate and utterly terrified.
"No, no, please."
I stood frozen in the middle of the living room. The scream had come from Jack's cage. I turned on the light. Jack stood there, his head lowered, his feathers raised defensively. He suddenly blurted out a string of words in a drunken man's voice.
"Shut up! I'll kill you! Shut up!"
Then the woman's scream again, followed by sobbing. The next morning I called the staff at the rescue center. Helen sighed heavily. "I should have told you sooner. Jack came from a complicated household. The police confiscated him during a domestic violence investigation. The husband killed his wife. And Jack witnessed it all? African Greys can live up to 70 years, and they remember everything. We were hoping that with time, he would forget those memories." 2 days later, as I was working, Jack flew in and landed on my desk. For the first time, he had actively approached me like that. "Are you okay?" I asked gently. He tilted his head, then said,
"Lisa, scared. Lisa, scared.
"Who's Lisa?"
Lisa, dead. Lisa, dead."
I started searching for information about Lisa's case. According to the news, her husband, Robert, had murdered her in a drunken rage, then committed suicide when the police arrived. The case was closed, but there were many ambiguous details. Lisa's body was found in the basement, even though the argument was said to have occurred in the living room. And the time between the murder and Robert's suicide was almost 24 hours.
"Not Robert. Not Robert.
Jack repeated.
Other man kill Lisa."
"Jack, you saw who killed Lisa," I whispered.
Mason kill Lisa."
I searched through the news articles and found a clue. Lisa's colleague named Mason had been briefly questioned but quickly dismissed as a suspect when Robert confessed. I contacted the detective in charge of the case. Initially, he was skeptical, but when I shared details that only Jack would know, he started to pay attention. I started following Mason, a man who worked at the same insurance company as Lisa. Through social media, I discovered he had recently moved to a new house in Venice Beach, too expensive for a regular insurance employee's salary. That night, I received a text message from an unknown number. Curiosity is a dangerous trait. I tried to contact Detective Ramirez but couldn't. A noise echoed from the back door. Someone was trying to break into my house. I lunged for the phone, but before I could dial 911, a loud crash echoed, the glass shattering. Jack let out a piercing scream and flew to the ceiling. I ran into the bathroom, locked the door, and called 911. The officer said they would arrive in 5 minutes. Footsteps stopped outside the bathroom door.
I didn't intend to hurt you. I just wanted to know what you've discovered.
Mason! I exclaimed in disbelief. Suddenly, Lisa's scream came from Jack's beak, along with Mason's words from that fateful night.
Shut up! You know too much! Damn parrot,
Mason whispered. Without thinking, I flung open the bathroom door and lunged out. Mason was reaching for Jack's cage, a gleaming knife in his hand. No! I screamed and threw myself at him. We crashed to the floor, wrestling for the knife. Mason was much stronger than me, and soon I found myself pinned down, the blade pressed against my throat. In that desperate moment, Jack suddenly swooped across the room and flew straight into Mason's face. His sharp claws and hard beak attacked mercilessly. Mason screamed, releasing his grip on my throat to cover his face. The knife clattered to the floor. Blood flowed from multiple wounds on his face as Jack continued his furious assault, flying around his head like a black whirlwind. Mason roared, swinging his arms wildly. I lunged to the corner of the room, grabbed the lamp. Mason had gotten to his feet, blood streaming down his face, his eyes wild. As he lunged towards me, I swung the lamp with all my might, hitting him in the head. Mason staggered but didn't fall, still advancing. I backed away, hitting the wall, with nowhere left to go. Just then, the wail of police sirens filled the air. Mason's face contorted in rage and desperation. He turned, intending to run out the back door, but Jack swooped down again, his claws tearing at Mason's eyes. Mason screamed in agony, stumbled, and fell, his head hitting the corner of the coffee table with a sickening thud. Police officers rushed in, guns drawn. I slumped to the floor, exhausted and trembling. Jack flew to my shoulder, a feathered comfort. "You're safe now," an officer said. Half an hour later, my house had become a crime scene. Mason was still alive, but severely injured. Detective Ramirez arrived, his face grim as he took my statement. Mason was the beneficiary of a large insurance policy Lisa had taken out, a detail overlooked in the initial investigation. So Robert wasn't the killer? We believe he was murdered, and it was staged as a suicide. When the police officers left, I sat down on the sofa, feeling exhausted, but strangely at peace. Jack flew over, landing beside me. For the first time, he nuzzled his head against my hand, an affectionate gesture he had never shown before. "Thank you," he said in his own voice. San Diego's always hot in July, but I'd never felt this cold in my life. 2 days later, the cops found my daughter Lily in a storm drain near the pier. My neighbor had seen Lily with some guy on the beach. That's what kicked off the manhunt. Only took 3 days before they tracked him down. Roland Cooper, 43. The forensics team said Lily died from asphyxiation. Her lungs were full of water. At least she didn't suffer too long. I kept telling myself that, like it would somehow help. Every night I held onto her clothes, breathing in what was left of her smell before it vanished for good. I didn't say a word unless I absolutely had to. Didn't sleep unless I was dead tired. The trial kicked off on a gray, miserable morning at the San Diego County Courthouse. It was drizzling, light but steady. I couldn't cry anymore. The tears had dried up weeks ago, ever since they found Lily's body. All that was left was this cold, hollow feeling and a slow-burning anger I couldn't shake. Cooper sat there in cuffs, looking way too normal. He glanced at me once, then quickly looked away. That was the moment I first thought it. Could I kill someone? The prosecutor laid everything out. Lily had been lured off the beach. Cooper's DNA was on her clothes. They even had footage from a convenience store camera. His car was parked right by the storm drain. I just stared at the floor as they read out the forensics report pics. I clutched the hem of my shirt, my whole body shaking as I listened to one forensic conclusion after another. Then the trial wrapped up for the day, but I couldn't process a damn thing. My mind was frozen, numb from fear and grief. Day 2 was worse. I had to sit through the defense trying to twist everything. They said the evidence was all circumstantial. No one actually saw Cooper hurt Lily. They claimed the DNA made sense because he had just helped her find her way home. Total bullshit. Lies. But day 3, it changed everything. I was in the second row, eyes locked on Cooper as he took the stand. He looked too calm. Meanwhile, I was shaking with rage. How could he be so composed when my daughter was dead and my entire world had been shattered? Did you kill Lily Martinez? The judge asked the question that cut right through me. Number, I didn't hurt her, he said. His voice didn't even waver. Then he started in on this story, so twisted, so unbelievable, I had to grip the edge of my chair just to stay upright. Lily told me her father had done bad things to her, he said, staring down at his hands like some broken soul. She came up to me on the beach, not the other way around, like everyone's saying. I felt the blood drain from my face. My ex left when Lily was 4, but he never hurt her, and Lily'd never walk up to a stranger. She said she'd tell everyone I touched her if I didn't give her money. Cooper kept going, his voice shaking now, like he was putting on some damn performance. I panicked because of my record. I just wanted to talk, explain she couldn't say stuff like that. My mind was spinning with rage. He was dragging my daughter's name, who was gone because she couldn't defend herself, through the dirt. He was up there, in front of God and everyone, dragging my daughter's name through the mud. She started screaming, and I just wanted her to be quiet. I didn't mean to. I covered her mouth, and then everything happened so fast. I stood up, slipped my hand into my pocket, felt the weight of the gun. I couldn't let him keep going. Not one more lie. Nobody even noticed me. All eyes were locked on Cooper and that sick story of his. I lifted the gun, calm as anything. 3 bangs, the shots cracked through the courtroom like thunder. I watched him drop, eyes wide in shock, blood blooming across his white shirt like spilled paint. The whole courtroom blew up. I didn't move, just stood there, the gun still in my hand. I didn't fight back. The guards rushed me, tackled me to the floor. The gun slipped out of my grip, clattering across the tiles. For my daughter. That's all I whispered as they cuffed me. In the cold of the cell, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. There was nothing left to be afraid of. All the worst things I ever feared, they already happened. There was nothing left that could break me more. Time didn't feel real behind bars. Days blurred together. I thought of Lily almost every night. I'd picture her running down the beach, laughing, the waves chasing at her heels. That laugh of hers, it still made me smile. I didn't regret what I did, wasn't proud of it either. But I got it. Love and hate, they're not that different. They both come from the same place, deep down, where the heart breaks and still keeps beating anyway. This story is based on real events. In 1980, in Lübeck, Germany, a 7-year-old girl named Anna Mary was kidnapped and murdered by Klaus Grabowski, a man with a long history of abusing children. He lured Anna into his home and killed her. At his trial in 1981, Grabowski claimed Anna had blackmailed him, saying she'd lie about being abused by her father. That testimony enraged Anna's mother, Marianne Bachmeier, and on the 3rd day of the trial, she walked into the courtroom with a gun and shot Grabowski dead. Marianne was arrested on the spot. She was tried separately and eventually sentenced to 3 years in prison. The public was torn, while Marianne always said she did it to defend her daughter's honor. She passed away from cancer in 1996 and was buried beside Anna.